Well, it's happened. After being cursed to watch and review anime for your sick pleasure, I've now reached a new level of low. The impotent curse anime. And I'm only half joking about it. Still, Unnamed Memory is ironically pretty memorable because you know that producers are trying to find something that has the right blend of horny and action-packed, as well as a gimmick. And as far as that criteria goes, this one's pretty solid. Episode 1. The story begins as any good one does, with some breaking and entering. Violating someone's personal property under the guise of adventure, Prince Oscar of Pharsis and his assistant Lazar sneak their way into the tower to find a Deus Ex Machina to solve his problems. This time, it's in the form of a wish from the powerful Azure Witch. The boys are feeling pretty good until they realise that the tower hasn't been conquered in like 70 years. They reach the final room only to be shocked at two demons popping up to make some red pancakes. Luckily, our boy isn't completely useless. Wins the battle, leading to a sudden fall, then meeting with the Azure Witch, who certainly doesn't look like it's been 70 years. Either way, they meet and we get the reason behind this whole hassle. Oscar's got killer sperm. After a little cursed by the Witch of Silence, Oscar can't produce an heir without also producing a death certificate for his beloved. The witch can't seem to break the curse, so Oscar presents another alternative.
お前はどうなんだ? お前は沈黙の魔女の魔力に耐えられるのか?
そりゃ余裕で耐えられますけど。
Marry him since she could handle the curse. Naturally, she refuses because those are some ick vibes, but they do make a deal of spending 1 year together as his bodyguard. The two seal the deal and they leave the tower with a familiar and assistant in tow. The first episode actually does a decent job of building up some intrigue, as thankfully they didn't just expose the plot right at us, allowing the world building to go on a step-by-step basis. The plot is honestly kind of ridiculous, but there's a genuine worry and fear that makes us sympathetic. It also helps that Oscar is kind of charming, if a little weird. Otherwise, it's a nice start to the story. Episode 2. The second episode gets right to it in the way I like. Despite being kinda coerced into the whole bodyguard role, the Azure Witch Tinasha takes the job pretty seriously, putting some heavy protection on her heir-obsessed prince, and even taking the time to scope out the castle. She also finds out that someone must have a serious grudge against the royal family since all of Oscar's cousins took the old off-screen death route, leaving him the only viable king. Makes his obsession with getting an heir a little more understandable, doesn't it? In the brief time she was here, she saved Sylvia from a falling chandelier and beats the general in a sparring contest. Her girl boss moments come to an end when her familiar Litola notes some bad vibes coming across from Druza. Clearly, her taste for blood is rising. She goes to check the anomaly, but not before she has to deal with some additional protection thanks to a concerned prince.
腕の立つ者を集める。
私にはあなた以外を守る義理はないです。
承知している。
Turns out to be a ghost of Tinasha's past, as the apprentice of some dude she offed can't respect someone being built differently and tries to poorly kill her. He runs off to release a seal of a demon she locked, and Tinasha demands that she head in alone since the soldier fodder's just gonna get in the way. The mage had quite a bit of backup, but it still failed, leaving only one alive. But Tinasha was really in a flexing mode this episode and broke the seal herself to finish the demon once and for all.
70年ぶりだな。良い眠りだったか?
Well, it worked, but we get an epic battle as a reward and she gets a trip to the hospital. The episode ends with something happening to the ancient, young-looking witch that no other anime has done. They made the immortal look older. Overall, another decent episode. Got some intrigue on Tinasha's past, and we can see them slowly take the steps to make their relationship blossom into something more than a deal made in desperation. Episode 3. What's this? Some more intrigue? Don't mind if I do, Unnamed Memory. This episode has some light-hearted fluff in the beginning about Dinashar's hair and her familiar's panic in what I assume is a white-knuckle grip of control. After that, we meet the head honcho of the kingdom, Oscar's father, who gets the shock of his life when the guy declares that he's gonna marry Dinashar. And while that's happening, two mages whose names I won't even mention until I feel like they'll be relevant, examine the previous episode's battlefield and get interrupted by another figure connected to Dinashar's past. And once again, this figure is aiming to kill.
僕たちはそれだけの一族ですから。見逃すことはできないと言ったら
with only one escaping after a sacrifice. Meanwhile, Oscar and Lazar are making a habit of putting the royal line in danger by sneaking off once again by heading to Bile Forest. What an unfortunate name. Where after some shenanigans, they meet another mysterious reclusive witch. And she's another mysterious figure from Dinashar's past. She tempts Oscar with some love potion type stuff to use, but he displays some Chad-like resilience and refuses to stoop to that level. They leave, but Dinashar eventually notices the weirdo prince is even stranger than usual, or not strange enough, depending on your perspective, I suppose. She figures out that there's a curse on him and attempts to remove it.
Dinasha.
悪趣味
leading to a scene of him choking Dinashar out, but in a hot way. The curse breaks, Oscar swears some mushy stuff, and Dinashar calls out her witch friend Lucrezia for pulling that nonsense. She apologizes by handing her Oscar's bodily fluid, which is a standard apology gift, I imagine, and the episode ends with even more hints of their relationship's future. It also has me believing that maybe the royal lineage would be safer if she wasn't around, because with friends like these, who needs enemies? Episode 4. You know how this series has a bunch of chapters to it and this season only has like 12 episodes? Well, you'll remember that from now on, as this one has just an absurd amount of information. The episode starts with Oscar and Dinashar sparring and shifts to the introduction of a new nation with some knowledge of our resident witch. We then see Dinashar encounter a familiar face, the mage who survived the battle in episode 3. It turns out she's Oscar's maid, adding a new layer of intrigue to the story. Wanted to spend some time on that? Well, too bad. Now the envoy gives out a secret name of Dinashar, and we discover there's a new all-mage country that's popped out and their intentions don't feel very honest here. There's a little bit of mind-controlling shenanigans going on before we suddenly have a training session for Oscar as he and Dinashar are now in her tower sparring for days on end. If it feels confusing to understand that, well, to be honest, it's the same for me too. Oscar shows his improvement by taking out a bunch of adventurers that popped into the tower. So, back at the castle, the general's dead, Miralis kills some guy, and Dinashar thinks the new mage nation might be up to something. Now, that was a lot, wasn't it? Yes, honestly, that's the best way to describe it. I was contemplating the lack of extreme exposition, but I feel like this rush job of fitting every part of the plot they can in 12 episodes may not have been the right choice. There needed to be some serious timing. Hopefully, the next episode is better. Episode 5. Well, let me get this straight by saying Oscar has gone from being pretty likable to a downright incel in one episode.
相手目が覚めてしまった。
どうかしたの？
これからいいことがあるんだ。
So, we start the episode with Dinashar dreaming of a bad time when she was being carried away only to wake up to Oscar carrying her in reality. It leads to a look at her past trauma and reminds us as to why she's the most interesting character. Then we get a surprise announcement by the king that he found another candidate for Oscar. Surprise! It's Miralis, who can apparently withstand the curse of Oscar thanks to some magic-suppressing Deus Ex Machina. Well, Oscar's taking this news by being what is frankly an unrepentant ass when he barged into the tower to harass Dinashar, only to find her consulting with Lucrezia about the curse. As it turns out, the castle where the Goodman King lives does no prior background checks on its employees, and they wonder why most of the family is missing. Well, General Ars has a brain cell which is more than the rest and caused Dinashar to figure out what's going on. They hatch a plan to look intimate for some tests, though the reason behind this is a little thin. Regardless, Oscar also catches this and loses his shit. He punches Ars, puts a magic suppressor on Dinashar, and makes it look like he's gonna, well, can't say that word on YouTube, but I think you get the drill, right?
俺はお前を他の男にくれてやるつもりで連れてきたわけじゃない。分かってないなら骨身に染みるほど教えてやろうか。
When she blasts him back, he apologizes and says he was just trying to scare her. I'm sorry, scaring her? Like, with this one episode, any and all respect I had for this guy disappears in an instant as I see one of the most poorly contrived reasons for drama ever. Since I have the rest of the episode to focus on, the gang looks further into Mirrorless only to get attacked by her, and she puts up a decent fight too.
行け！炎よ！食らいなさい！ They clash, Dinasha's stunned for a bit, and Mirrorless goes to the treasury to look for some kind of MacGuffin, but does end up losing her body when the gang catches up. Her soul escapes along with the object, leaving an intact and empty body. The episode ends, and I'm happy to move on to something else after that hot mess. Episode 6. You know that curse Oscar had? The reason behind their meeting that kinda served as an important plot point and mystery for the two to uncover? Well, it's gone now. Yup, Dinasha broke. Cast a reverse curse that got the job done.
ちゃんと素性は黙っておくさ。
婚約者とか言ったら吹っ飛ばしますからね。
覚えておこう。
As thanks, the king invites her to a party, instead of like gold or a title or other royalty 101 rewards. Still, some drama goes down when Oscar hears about the mage nation Kuskal's king Larnak burning some village for some justifiable funsies, but more importantly, Oscar gets Dinasha's dragon and a kiss on the cheek, which for this thirsty beau must have been like finding a spring. We then see a real whirlwind of events when Dinasha weakens the barriers she made on Oscar and tells him that she's leaving his service to be with King Larnak and heads off. Understandably baffled, he heads over to Lucrezia to get an info dump, and boy is it one. Turns out Dinasha has a really long name and that she was destined to be the new queen because she's that OP, but Larnak refuses to not just be chill about things, and performs a ritual to take her power, which leads to the destruction of the kingdom and Dinasha ending up immortal. This infodump is preceded by news that Dinasha is being a little silly by attacking several cities in Kuskal's name. The king demands Oscar kill her, but underestimates how down bad he is for her and promises to be chill if he becomes king. I mean, he didn't really have a ton of options, but yay, Oscar's king now. Episode 7.
ルスト王子。
まさかお前は何の用だ。
We start off with a discussion about the ethnocentric nation and its past genocide, which is always a fun way to start any episode, isn't it? Dinasha calls out the king and flies off, where she and Larnak discuss the plans to make a super spell, and it seems that the guy is pretty damn stupid since he has 100% faith in her. Basically, they're saying men ain't shit when it comes to magic control, and Larnak had way too much of it, which drove him crazy. We shift to Iskar and his grumpy butt wondering what's taken the nation so long to mobilize. It's also when the horniest girl from the last episode pops up and reveals that Dinasha has been having some late night visits with her brother the king, and it honestly calls to Oscar's stupidity because it looks like this was no secret. The two meet for a second before Dinasha disappears, and then there's a grand battle in place with a creepy mage guy teleporting the whole army for an ambush. Larnak then pops up to make some kind of monologue and then basically makes them all watch his wedding with Dinasha, which is one weird flex. But there's a lot to go on in this episode, so the bottom line is Dinasha has been basically twisting Larnak's plans around this whole time, and the idiot is the only one not aware. She gathered some allies amongst the mages, and you know all those people she killed? That was... nah, no she didn't. That was a trick, you see. Anyway, long story short, Larnak is beaten, and Oscar and Dinasha get together. Hooray! Does it feel a little abrupt? Was this a lot that suddenly ended immediately? Well, that's exactly what happened. This also begs the question, what the hell are the rest of the episodes about? Episode 8. Well, folks, the show takes a real turn from being Dinasha-centric to a little more on national politics, or at least that's how it seems. Don't get me wrong, Dinasha's history was pretty interesting and there was a lot to love if they gave me more than 4 seconds to appreciate it. Whining aside though, we take a look at Dinasha doing some looting of blue orbs before we shift to discussions about raiders and one guard who knows way too much about one of the survivors.
ある日、馬に乗った悪い奴らが村を襲いました。彼らは家に火を放って村を焼き、人を殺そうとしました。しかしそこに青い服を着た剣士が現れたのです。
彼は悪い奴らを追い払うとさらわれそうになっていた娘を助けました。
We hear a genuinely awful story from said survivor and move to shift to another scene with some Indian soap opera level editing, as it turns out that the horrible storyteller is actually a mage. The party gets into a bit of trouble with some raiders, the Ito, who demand a duel for that horrible storyteller. Why do they want her? Well, not for her personality, I imagine. Either way, the duel ends with Oscar cutting the guy's arm and the storyteller running to the guy whom she either hates or loves. I'm gonna be honest, I don't care because it's probably stupid. The ground breaks and Oscar and Dinasha fall underground into some conveniently placed water, taking away my hope for Oscar's death.
ここは糸の聖地の真下。壁に刻まれているのは彼らの歴史でしょうか。
過去魔法球記憶する一族
Anyway, turns out that the god from the other nation is a lie and is possessing a blonde girl. They have a fight, she eats the god, and Oscar stabs it out. It's all very heartfelt. The episode ends with the two doing some lovey-dovey shit and the blonde lady and the raider running off together. Why would she run off with the man who killed her husband? I've got no clue. The anime straight up doesn't explain, but at least it ended. Episode 9. So, after everything, it's official.
あとは陛下のお妃様が決まりでもすれば心置きなく年を越せるのだがね。
ティナーシャ殿さえその気になってくれれば早いかもしれないな。
そしたら歴代で最も美しい王妃になるんじゃないか。
Oscar's gonna marry Dinasha, the Azure Witch. Who'd have thunk it? Either way, it's now got people gossiping about the relationship and how some might feel about having to get rid of their racism with a witch queen on the throne. These thoughts also seem to affect Dinasha, since she's not sure what she wants to do with the deadline for her bodyguard contract ending soon. Should she marry the guy or wipe all memories of her? I'm hoping for his death, but her gal pal Pamira is there to comfort her and honestly feels like she has a better chemistry with her in that one scene than with Oscar throughout this whole anime. I'll admit that there's a pretty cute scene between the two later on, but it's interrupted when the castle is invaded by another mysterious force, this one in control of giant monsters and a lot of poison. I mentioned poison because that's what gets to Oscar as my hopes are finally answered.
大丈夫か。
はい、ありがとうございます、陛下。
He's gonna be dead and we'll all be free. Wait, Dinasha, what are you doing? No! Don't save him! Well, Dinasha ruined my happiness by preserving his body while making an antidote for the poison with her own. It works, but she's out of it as a result and old Oscar here can't seem to remember Dinasha. Oh hey, it's like that thing they mentioned earlier, like it's foreshadowing or something? Well, I just can't care because in the next few minutes he remembers her again and goes to find her almost dead. And then she isn't. Yeah, she's healed.
何やってるんだ。
私ってあなたのことが好きなんですか？
お前の壊れっぷりも極まってきたな。そうだ、今頃気づいたのか。おいで。
The two finally agree their feelings are mutual and the episode ends. Yes. Episode 10. Well now, it looks like there's finally a plot happening here when Oscar and Dinasha go off to the East Temple for New Year's. There is some stuff with a bunch of kids where I'm guessing they're trying to hint that Dinasha would be good with children, but they also finally bring up the fact that Oscar apparently has magic that's been sealed away and that Dinasha's worried about having kids because it means the risk of them going wild with all the power. I straight up don't want it because I'd prefer if Oscar died alone and a virgin, but still. The rest of the event is a lot of fluff with the kids and Oscar seeing snow for the first time. It's not bad stuff. The drama pops off though when a mysterious woman basically calls Dinasha a whore. That woman is Leonara the Witch, but we don't have time to focus on that.
どうです？一杯。
ノーマン、知っているだろう、トラビス。
There's another party to attend, and this time it's once again another figure from Dinasha's past. Jesus, they just pop up wherever. There's some playful banter, and the two, along with Lady Aurelia, discuss the kids thing and potentially change her mind about it. Things get crazy when the castle's attacked by invaders, this time going after Aurelia. The gang manages to save the day, but they learn the perpetrator is Leonara. Turns out that she has a grudge against Dinasha for some stuff in the past and against her friend Travis, the demon, which is why she's after the princess. There's a bit of preamble, but the gang's determined to find out what Leonara is plotting next. Episode 11. It's wartime again as the gang heads to Yada and frees the princess, who's the whitest woman I've ever seen. Like some real Ariana vibes for a girl who's lived her life in the desert, supposedly. Either way, they explain the situation, and now Yada's army joins them in confronting Leonara. But not before another obligatory bath scene, which seems to be popping up more and more by now. Either way, it's all fluff about her being possessive of Oscar and stuff. A feeling that I'm never gonna understand, to be honest. As she was chilling, people were dying in a brutal war, but at least she's clean, right? The couple then takes off to join the battle. The fighting in this episode is pretty clean as we see Oscar deal with regenerating Moog so he doesn't feel completely useless.
何もかも無駄なあがきだ。所詮人は人に過ぎない。
無駄かどうか自分で試してみろ。
While the girls are having a blast, or getting blasted, Leonora reveals her power-up MacGuffin, and they clash for a bit as she monologues on the difference between the two and how Dinasha has changed, being kinder and all of that. The fight goes on, but eventually the good guys win. Some victory music is playing, and all that death gets the couple hot and bothered since they finally held one of the weirder wedding ceremonies.
オスカーライス・インクレアトゥス・ロズ・ファルサス。汝、ティナシャース・メイヤー・ウル・アエテルナ・トゥルダール。
But it's finally done. Oscar and Dinasha are hitched, and the episode ends, but not before an ominous cut to the witch that started it all, the Witch of Silence. Episode 12. So, the ending, eh? I can best describe it with the word what, but I feel like you need more. Long story short, Oscar can't keep his hands to himself and accidentally touches the magic orb thing in Dinasha's tower, transporting him to the distant past. Yes, you heard that right. Specifically, Dinasha's past, where Oscar gets the opportunity to pull the craziest thing we've seen in this series yet.
あなた誰？
お前の夫になる男だ。
He meets young Dinasha, and the two try to figure out how to go back, but let's be honest, it doesn't matter. You know why it doesn't matter? Why none of what happened mattered? Because when time travel's involved, things always lead to stuff disappearing. In this case, Oscar witnesses some of the harshness of Dinasha's existence and realizes he can put a stop to so much of her pain, and so he does it.
ラナク、この人たち誰？
じっとしててね、相手。
He interrupts the ritual Larnak did on Dinasha as Oscar basically says, hey, don't listen to that man, listen to me, yet another man. And it works. The ritual is prevented and everything that happened is no more, harkening back to that god-awful story the blonde lady told us in episode 8. Dinasha cries as the one persona to truly care about her disappears and the episode ends. Overall, my input has to be that they shoved in like 4 seasons worth of story in 12 episodes and they still had to leave a ton out from the novel. Here's hoping that the second season learns from this. As always though, don't keep us hanging. Be sure to comment below with your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of this juicy content. See you next time.